it's Jill Tiny with Simon Wellsted, my special guest today, and this is the Journey of Possibility podcast for BeCollaboration. And today we're going to be talking more around collaboration, because this is something that Simon is really into in a whole industry. Simon has been a collaborator relatively recently. I think it was beginning of the year, wasn't it, Simon, that you got involved? What was it initially, as we've asked a lot of our other collaborators, what was it initially that kind of made you go, this is interesting, I'd like to get involved in?
Probably because the language that was being used by the people that introduced me to the group was the language that I use all the time in what I'm trying to build. So there was an instant synergy in terms of language. And I think that's repeated itself pretty well at every meeting I've been. There's always been some language used by somebody in whatever's being presented that actually is pretty well exactly what I believe in, what I try to say myself in my own context. So, which is why I say I'm trying to build BeCollaboration in an industry.
Yeah. And we're trying to build it out of industry. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but you're trying to do it specifically in an industry as well. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your journey? How did you get to where you are now? When did you start? What was your first foray into work? When did you start working? 18, 21, 16?
21, 22. Went into IT because that was my love at the time, and I put that now in quotes really. Worked my way through, developing and programming and all that sort of thing. Became a consultant, and then ultimately joined one of the top 5 consultancies as a specialist in IT security.
Okay.
So IT security, governance, working with a lot of the government organisations that we're not allowed to talk about, but we do. So that type of security work, and I did it for sort of 25, 27 years, something like that, maybe 30 years.
So did you choose to go into that from uni, or did you fall into it, or was it something that you had a burning desire to do?
It's what I did at uni, and it was what I loved at the time.
Yeah, so you did love it. I mean, a lot of people kind of fall into jobs, don't they, as they leave school or uni, and it's like, and they stick with it because it's a decent income, or it's more money than they care to throw away, and the options are just not worthwhile. But you actually had this, you went to uni to do something you loved, and you left uni and got a job in something you loved. So no wonder you were there for quite a good time. What disillusioned you?
Really interesting. I started to realise that personally I didn't fit. The industry had changed, consultancy had changed. My final company that I was working with was one of the top 5 consultancies. When I joined it, I joined a specialism area. It wasn't security at the time; it was a different area. But we were taken on as specialists, and we worked in specialist teams. What happens, and has happened in the consultancy arena, is they're trying to now create what they call the rounded consultant. So you're expected to be able to be good at everything. So in the previous sort of context, you'd get pulled in specifically as a specialist to do something on a particular project. In the new world, you were expected to basically be involved in winning the business, tendering and winning the business, building the bid, and then you get moved on to the project and all the way through the life of the project. And
I can see how that might be interesting for some people, because it's not just, you're not a little silo of doing that bit and then moving on to something else. You actually get to see it from creation to conclusion.
Yes, I can see that, but from my point of view, it was I was being cajoled to become good at things that I really wasn't interested. They weren't me. I wasn't wired to do things, So it basically sort of over a period of time was just became disillusioning. And the fact that there's a hell of a lot of travel involved in consultancy. I mean, I was literally Scotland, Cornwall, and everything in between, and sometimes abroad. And I put the stop to the international travel quite a few years ago. But when you're expected to be in Scotland for 9 o'clock in the morning on a Monday morning, and you have to catch the red eye sort of up to Scotland and whatever, and or wherever it might be, it gets to you after a while, living out of a suitcase in hotels and whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say I'm not going to say it's a young man's game, because that's. But hey, there's a lot of people.
Yeah, I think travelling and living away from home, if home is important to you, and you're not given an opportunity to explore the places you get to go and see. It's a bit like being working on an aeroplane, isn't it? It sounds so glamorous. You get to see all these different countries, but you don't, do you? You just kind of get there, do your thing, and come back again. So
you get to pay after a while.
Yeah. So once you've been disillusioned and you started looking around, did you look around for another job, or what was the impetus to get you to do what you're doing today?
Well, I used to play sport. I used to play badminton at quite a high level, and I got myself injured quite a while ago, and went through a bit of a process because nobody could actually find out what had caused the problem, and what everybody had their little take on. I saw lots of different people, and everybody had their little take on what was wrong, and actually none of them were right. Now I know that none of them were right. So I trained up in sports injury rehab and soft tissue work while I still had a good salary. Did all the expensive training while I was still earning a good salary. And to be fair, I was waiting for them to put money on the table to say who wants to go, which they used to do on a regular basis. But sod's law, they didn't do it for 3 or 4 years when I was waiting for it. So I was waiting to go, but waiting for the right moment to go.
And you got there in the end.
I got there in the end. Yeah.
So then that made you start your own business, or go and look for another job?
No, I went and started my own business, set up a clinic, and started working in the sort of injury rehab and soft tissue field.
And how did that pan out?
It was okay. I mean, none of us, when we get trained in whatever, especially in my industry, nobody gets trained how to run a business.
No.
We get trained how to do what we're being trained to do, but actually the understandings of the nuts and bolts of the other dimensions of actually running the business, marketing, sales, blah, 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 all the things that go with it.
Yeah.
So that was, something which I had to get up to grips with again straight away.
It's the typical Michael Gerber scenario, isn't it, that he talks about in the E-Myth, the book that he wrote, around people that are technicians, pie makers, or whatever it is they do. Then they go in, do what they love, and then the rest of the business kind of makes the thing they love the chore rather than the joy. And the business suffers as a result of that. And whilst the business is suffering, then the joy that's going into the pie making, everything else, you lose your customers, you lose your staff, and it doesn't work at all, does it? And as a business coach, so many people come to me and they say, I don't know how to do business. I don't know what the right thing is. And it's a bit like tech, there's always more than one way to do things. You can do it this way, or you can do it this way, or you can do it this way. And some people just want to know the right way. And the right way is the way that works for them half the time. And you have to kind of experiment. You have to try things out, and you have to give it a go. Having an understanding and education around what makes it all fit together and tick is great. But there is no right way around it. And I generally say to people, it's common sense. So if you want to earn an income, you have to sell your widgets. And if you have to sell your widgets, you've got to tell people about it. So you've got to find people that want your widgets. And then all the dynamics go together. And it isn't rocket science. But while people are kind of panicking about, I don't know what to do, they end up doing nothing, don't they? And they sit and they in this downward spiral of, okay, I'll do social media because that's marketing. And then they're so busy on Facebook reading other people's posts and liking them. And they go, all right, I've done my social media today. Without actually thinking of common sense.
This is an interesting question of being the all-rounder that I was struggling, didn't really like in my consultancy, because you can't be good at everything. Actually, making yourself be good at sales, be good at marketing, be good at this, be good at that, be good at the other, doesn't work.
No.
Because you start resenting it, you start putting things off that you don't like. You start resenting it because you're no good at it and you think you can't do it, and therefore things don't work. Which brings us to the whole collaboration piece, of course. But you know, it took me a while to learn that, and I learnt it running my business, which is then when I realised why I was so disillusioned and hating the consultancy work, or grew to hate it because of it. And I think it wasn't until I started my own business and I realised, you know, the whole process of understanding what you're wired to do, talent dynamics, and all that sort of thing. That was actually quite an eye opener to me, and it answered the questions of why I was a little bit out of place in the consultancy world, with them trying to mould the perfect consultant.
And also, many people who think, oh, I'm no good at that. There's something wrong with me. I should be good at that. I have to learn how to do that. So they'll struggle to learn something that naturally isn't a fit for them. And then the thing they are really good at, they neglect, and then they're not, and they lose that ability as well. So you're kind of muddying the waters. And basically, from talking about earlier, we were having a conversation about mental health awareness week. You know, poor mental health stems from feeling that you're worthless and you're not good enough. So it's like a vicious circle that it's going to make you ultimately ill if you feel like you're scrabbling to learn and do things all the time. That is not to say, of course, that you can use wealth dynamics as an excuse for, oh, well, if I'm a supporter, that means I don't have to be a mechanic. No, it means that you've got to be aware of what's required, because you need a mechanic to support you in what you're doing. But actually, we still have to kind of have an understanding. Going back to Michael Gerber, you can't abdicate your responsibility in any area of your business. Because then if somebody comes in and takes over, the minute they disappear for whatever reason, then you're, I don't know what they're doing. So when I very first started in my coaching business, I got my husband to support me and help me on doing the accounts, because I'm not a money person. It doesn't excite me. It's not my thing. But one, I needed to know an idea of it, and also to be able to help my clients around it as well. So he taught me how to do it. And I'm like, right, I get it now. I understand it. So simple. Do this spreadsheet, do that spreadsheet, look at Sage, got it. Now can you do it, please? And then I passed it on because I knew what was going on. But I couldn't have abdicated responsibility until such time as I knew. And it's that kind of, it's not a need for control, but I think it's empowerment by having that awareness of what's going on around you.
That what you just said actually is a beautiful sort of story around what I'm trying to achieve, which, you know, we're obviously going to come on to. But the message is that be good at what you do and understand what you do, but also understand where you fit into the bigger picture and where other people can actually do something better than you.
Yeah.
And that's really powerful. It's invigorating when you get to that point and you understand this is what I'm good at. This is where I'm good at. This is where I fit in for my clients. Okay, but actually the power is then knowing when to then work with other people who can fit the jigsaw together, and essentially that's a powerful realization. Yeah, definitely. And then of course understanding the power of collaboration in order to make those connections work, because all very well going, I'm this sort of person, you're that sort of person, and you're that sort of person, we should work together. But then if there's all the baggage going on at the background and they haven't dealt with some of that through personal development, then there's always going to be a clunky space of like, and before you know it, there's like, well, she said she was going to do this and he said he was going to do that, and it's not working. And you're like, well, what, collaboration is such a good idea, so why doesn't it work? And it's understanding that background behind it. So you had an experience earlier, you telling me about a show that you went to, and I'm just going to touch on it briefly. How some people are more receptive to what you're about than others. And it's interesting that some people are kind of like, well, we find it as well, BeCollaboration. You get two business coaches in a room, and sometimes it'll be like, oh, you're a business coach over there, I'm not talking to you because you're potentially going to take my clients. Or in a BeCollaboration room, you go, oh, you're a business coach, come sit, let's talk, let's find out what you do, let's see if we can work together. So it's interesting how different people have different perceptions of we can help each other as opposed to you're going to steal my clients. And so it's the same thing, you're going to work together.